climate change matters as an event. There's a World Radio Day, there's a Climate Day, there's a Mazingira Day, there's COP, there's a lot of attention. But once that is done, nobody bothers about. Like we covered COP29. Radio has not followed up with the commitments that were made there to see what is being done by governments and all. So it's a very event-oriented. It's a very personal approach. Again, when the president is making a speech, we listen to him. When the minister, but once that is done, again, nobody follows. That, like what the victims go through, what other experts in climate change are saying, radio doesn't give any space. So we see those gaps, which also we are not blaming radio so much. We're also looking at how much has this journalist been trained on climate change. So that then, because climate change is a specialized area, how many of the specialized journalists do we have in our newsrooms? So what capacity building efforts? If we are being told there's a climate change matter in Taita Taveta, you want to go and do a story, how much of your editors are willing to sponsor you and go and do that story? So there are also other challenges that we see. So much has not been done. Radio can do more by giving more space, especially the community radio. And we have 57 community radio stations in the country. So if they involve the community, the audiences, the experts, the victims, the debate will be a bit different. So more can be done.
So that's a great point, by the way. So what would you say that, or what would you suggest that radio should prioritize so that we can move away from just reporting on disasters and now come towards inspiring real action?
And that's what we are saying. The issue of adaptation is about inspiring stories. You remember we have talked about solution-based journalism, constructive journalism, development journalism. That these problems are there. The floods in Tana River are there. The mudslides in Moranga are there. Some of these things are natural. But what can be done? How are communities then dealing? And stories have been told about the women in Kilifi and Kwale who are doing the mangrove forest and doing the carbon trading. And they're doing so well. So, you know, they have just done that. So who else is doing such? I know of families now in Budalangi that have moved away from just picking the mud and catfish from the floods into doing now fish ponds, and are surviving, you know. So there are good stories that can be told. I know now communities that were initially along the lake, they are now doing, for example, fish cage farming, just in realization that sometimes the rivers and the lake sometimes are not reliable, and sometimes it costs them. So there are a lot of communities are adopting. The Ogiek, for example, have their own radio station, Oserian FM in Mau Forest inside. And what they have been doing is to talk about how the communities can live with the forest, that you don't necessarily need to destroy the forest. And you will see many times in Mau, the Ogiek people rarely destroy the forest. They know how to live. It's us externals who have bought land there and who destroy that forest. So communities have known how, and that traditional knowledge. I know there's the rainmakers of Kakamega, for example, though they are called the rainmakers of Kakamega, but they are largely in Vihiga, and how they are helping, they are working with the meteorological department just to see how traditional knowledge can feed in scientific knowledge and predict the rains. And once they do that, they help in the issue of timing of harvesting, farming, and they have improved food security in their area. So there are a lot of positive stories that can be told. And that's our urge, that journalists also move away from this adversarial approach to only negative things. Whenever the Serikali's idea thing come up in Kano, there's a lot of attention. But what are other people, for example, positively dealing with the issue of climate change?
You've also touched on training on climate reporting, and we agree that radio is business, and you see media usually chases what it sells. So should we be talking about packaging how these climate journalists or climate reporters should now package how they report on matters climate change differently in order to also just the listener asikia elewe ni nini tunaongelelea?
Is it a good thing that has happened, Anne, in journalism, is that we are gradually moving away? The advertising model alone to sustain media has failed. And gradually, many of the media houses are coming back to audiences that now, like the print media, they are now coming back to selling the circulation figures, not necessarily the advertising, because a lot of issues have happened, reduction in government, revenue, reduction